My child, before this night is over, your life will begin to change in ways you cannot yet understand. I know how exhausted you have become. I have seen the silent tears falling in the darkness while the rain touched your window and the world around you kept moving as if your pain did not exist. I was there during the sleepless nights, the trembling prayers, the moments when you stared into the silence and wondered if I had forgotten you. But listen to me carefully tonight. I never left you. There is a reason this message appeared before you right now. Do not ignore it. Something holy is happening in this very moment, even if your heart still feels heavy. The pain you carried for so long is not the end of your story. Tonight is the beginning of your healing. Before we continue, comment your location and your local time below. And if this message is already speaking to your soul, gently subscribe and stay until the very end, because what I am about to reveal may change everything for you after tonight. My child, there were nights when the world around you became so quiet that even your own heartbeat sounded heavy inside your chest. Nights when the rain tapped softly against your window while you sat alone in the dark, staring at nothing, trying to hold yourself together for just a few more minutes. You told everyone you were fine. You smiled when people asked if you were okay, but deep inside you were slowly collapsing in places nobody could see. And still, I saw you. I saw the trembling hands wrapped around the cold coffee sitting untouched on the kitchen counter. I saw the exhaustion in your eyes when the clock reached 3 a.m. and sleep still would not come. I heard the prayers you whispered so quietly that even you thought heaven might not notice them anymore. But I noticed every single one. There were moments when you sat at the edge of your bed in complete silence because you no longer had the strength to explain your pain. The sadness became too deep for words. The loneliness became too familiar. Some nights you did not even cry anymore because your soul had grown tired of carrying disappointment after disappointment. Yet I remained beside you, even during the nights when you doubted me. Even during the moments when fear wrapped itself around your mind like a storm cloud refusing to leave. Even when you stared into the darkness and wondered if your life would ever feel light again. My child, listen carefully tonight, because this is important. The enemy wanted you to believe that your suffering meant you had been abandoned. That your unanswered prayers were proof that I no longer cared. That your emotional exhaustion meant you were weak. But none of those whispers came from me. I never once turned away from your tears. I was there in the silence after the panic attacks. I was there when your chest felt heavy for no reason at all. I was there when you walked through empty rooms feeling emotionally numb, wondering why happiness seemed so distant from your life. I was there during the nights when distant sirens echoed outside your window, while you quietly begged for peace to return to your heart. And my child, there is something you must understand. You survived moments that should have broken you completely. There were nights when the weight on your soul felt unbearable, yet somehow you kept breathing. Somehow you kept waking up the next morning. Somehow a tiny part of you still hoped things could change even after disappointment visited your life again and again. That small remaining hope was me holding on to you when you no longer knew how to hold on to yourself. I know how tired you are, not just physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. The kind that follows you into every room. The kind that makes laughter feel distant and simple tasks feel heavy. You have carried invisible battles while pretending everything was normal. You have answered messages while silently fighting tears. You have walked through crowded places feeling completely alone inside, and nobody truly knew. But I knew. I saw every hidden wound you tried to bury beneath distractions and forced smiles. I saw the memories that still haunt your quiet moments. I saw the regret you replay over and over when nobody else is around. I saw the fear that tells you nothing will ever change. That fear has been whispering to you for too long. Tonight I need you to stop listening to it, because after tonight something inside your spirit must begin to awaken again. Do not misunderstand me. My child, healing will not arrive all at once like thunder crashing through the sky. It will begin softly, quietly, like the first small light appearing before sunrise after a long and endless night. At first you may barely notice it, but little by little your heart will begin to breathe again, and that frightens the darkness surrounding you, because the pain was never meant to become your identity. You thought you were losing yourself, but the truth is, you were surviving one of the hardest spiritual seasons of your life. The pressure, the confusion, the emotional numbness, none of it was invisible to me. Even when your faith became weak, I still stayed near you. My child, there were nights when you almost gave up completely, nights when the future felt empty, nights when you questioned your worth, nights when you wondered whether anyone would truly notice if you disappeared into the silence forever. But listen to me carefully now. I kept you here for a reason. This message is not appearing before you by accident. Heaven allowed these words to reach you because your spirit is standing at the edge of a turning point. Even now, while you listen in the middle of the night with tired eyes and a heavy heart, something sacred is moving quietly inside you. You may not fully understand it yet, but your soul recognizes my voice. That ache inside your chest, the one you tried to ignore, was never just sadness. It was your spirit crying out for peace, crying out for rest, crying out for me. And I am answering you tonight, not with anger, not with punishment, not with shame, but with compassion. Because I know how hard this season has been for you. I know there were mornings when getting out of bed felt like carrying stones inside your body. I know there were moments when you stared at your reflection and barely recognized the person looking back at you. I know there were prayers that ended in tears because you no longer knew what words to say. Still, I listened. Every trembling prayer reached me. Every silent tear mattered to me. Every lonely night was seen by me. And before this night ends, I need you to remember something your pain made you forget. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. And you are not too broken for healing. The storm around your life has made it difficult for you to hear my voice clearly. But tonight, above the sound of fear, above the noise of regret, above the weight of exhaustion, I am calling gently to your heart once more. Come back to me. Not tomorrow, not when everything feels perfect. Now, bring me the grief you hide from others. Bring me the fear you bury during the daytime. Bring me the questions you are afraid to speak aloud. Bring me the exhaustion that has drained your spirit for so long. Because this is not where your story ends. And tonight, before the rain stops falling outside your window, before the silence disappears into morning, Khan need Khan to understand one thing Khan have not realized yet. My child, there were nights when you spoke to me through tears, yet all you heard in return was silence. And slowly, quietly, that silence began to frighten you. You wondered if I still listened when you prayed. You wondered if heaven had closed its doors to your voice. You wondered why the pain continued even after all the nights you begged me for relief. I know those thoughts haunted you. I know there were moments when your faith became exhausted from waiting. Moments when you sat alone in the dim light of your room, staring at the ceiling while thunder rolled somewhere far away, asking questions. You were almost afraid to speak aloud. God, where are you? Why does everything still hurt? Why do I feel so alone? And my child, even then I heard every word. But tonight I need you to understand something difficult about silence. Silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes silence is where transformation quietly begins. You believed I had abandoned you because your life did not change overnight. You thought I had forgotten your prayers because the storm did not immediately disappear. But what you could not see was that while you were crying in the darkness, I was already working beneath the surface of your pain. Slowly, carefully, patiently. There were things inside your spirit that needed healing before the blessings you asked for could safely arrive. You asked me to remove the loneliness, but first I needed to show you that your worth was not dependent on who stayed or who left. You asked me to stop the anxiety, but first I needed to teach your heart how to rest in my presence instead of depending on temporary distractions. You asked me to open certain doors, but I saw dangers hidden behind them that you could not yet understand. My child, some unanswered prayers were actually protection. I know that truth is painful, especially when your heart was desperate for relief, especially when you watched other people move forward while your own life seemed frozen in place, especially during those nights when the only sound in your apartment was the distant hum of traffic outside your window and the quiet ache inside your chest. Inside. You started believing everyone else was being chosen except you, but that was never true. You were never forgotten. You were simply in a season where your soul was being prepared through silence. And I know how exhausting that season became. The waiting changed you. The disappointment changed you. There were mornings when your body woke up, but your spirit still felt trapped in darkness. You carried invisible grief into ordinary days. You answered conversations while secretly fighting emotional battles nobody around you could recognize. And little by little, your faith became quieter, not because you stopped loving me, but because pain made you afraid to hope again. My child, listen carefully tonight. I never asked you to pretend you were strong. I saw the nights when your prayers became messy. I saw the moments when frustration filled your voice. I saw the nights you cried until exhaustion finally forced your eyes closed. I even saw the moments when anger rose inside you because you could not understand why life had become so heavy. And still, I stayed, because my love for you was never dependent on perfect faith. Even when your belief trembled, I remained beside you. Even when you stopped speaking to me for a while, I still listened to the sorrow hidden inside your silence. Even when fear convinced you that nothing would ever change, I continued walking beside you through every dark hallway of your life. My child, there is something sacred about this very moment right now. Because tonight, for the first time in a long time, your soul is beginning to hear my voice again through the noise of exhaustion. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, like rain falling against glass in the middle of the night, like warmth returning slowly to frozen hands, like the first breath after crying for too long. I know you have become tired of hoping for change. Tired of hearing people say everything will get better while your heart continued breaking in secret. Some nights you stopped asking for miracles entirely because disappointment had already wounded you too many times. But I need you to understand this. Your story is not ending in this darkness. The silence you feared was never empty. I was still guiding you through every unseen moment. I was protecting your mind during nights when despair came dangerously close. I was carrying your heart during moments when you no longer recognized yourself. I was keeping you alive through emotional storms that should have destroyed your peace completely. You survived because my hand never left you. And tonight I need you to stop measuring my presence only by visible results. Because some of my deepest work happens in hidden places. Roots grow in darkness before trees ever rise into sunlight. Healing often begins quietly before the heart fully understands what is happening. And right now, healing has already started inside you. That is why this message feels different. That is why something inside your chest feels unsettled while listening tonight. Your spirit recognizes that you are standing at the edge of change, not because your life suddenly became perfect, but because your soul is finally beginning to awaken from exhaustion. My child, I know you still carry fear. I know part of you is afraid to trust again. Because pain taught you how fragile hope can feel, I know there are still nights when anxiety visits your mind without warning. Nights when memories return like shadows creeping across the walls of your room. Nights when your heart whispers, what if nothing ever changes? But listen to me carefully now. I did not bring you this far to abandon you in the middle of your healing. The tears you cried were not wasted. The waiting was not meaningless. The silence was not punishment. Even now, while you sit here listening with tired eyes and a weary soul, heaven is closer to you than you realize. I am closer than the fear, closer than the loneliness, closer than the regret that keeps replaying inside your mind. And before this night is over, I need you to remember something your pain almost made you forget. You are still deeply loved, not because you were perfect, not because your faith never struggled, not because you always understood my timing, but because you are mine. And my child, there is a reason your spirit has felt restless these past few nights. My child, for a long time you believed your exhaustion came only from stress. You told yourself you were simply tired, overworked, emotionally overwhelmed. But the truth goes much deeper than that. Something has been quietly draining your spirit for far too long, and tonight I need Khan to finally see it clearly. There were moments when your body rested, yet your soul still felt exhausted. Moments when you slept for hours but woke up carrying the same heaviness in your chest. The sadness followed you from room to room like a shadow you could never fully escape. Even during peaceful moments, your mind refused to become quiet. You kept asking yourself, why do I feel this empty? And slowly the exhaustion became part of your identity. You learned how to function while hurting. You learned how to smile while emotionally collapsing inside. You learned how to answer I'm okay while carrying storms nobody else could hear. But my child, surviving is not the same as living. I did not create your heart to remain trapped in constant fear and emotional numbness. I know how hard you have tried to stay strong. I saw the mornings when you stood in front of the mirror trying to gather enough energy just to face another day. I saw the nights when the glow from your phone lit up your dark bedroom while you searched for anything that could distract you from your own thoughts. I saw the moments when you sat silently in your car after long days unable to move because your soul felt too heavy to continue. And still, you blamed yourself for being tired. But listen to me carefully tonight. Some of the pain you carry was never meant to be carried alone. You have been holding on to grief you never fully released, regret you never fully faced, fear you buried beneath distractions, memories you pretended no longer hurt. Every silent wound became emotional weight upon your spirit little by little until your heart no longer remembered what peace felt like. That is why even small disappointments suddenly feel unbearable. That is why certain nights become overwhelming for reasons you cannot explain. That is why your mind grows loud in the silence. My child, unresolved pain does not disappear simply because time passes. And there is one wound in particular that has followed you into almost every quiet moment. You know exactly which one I mean. The memory that still tightens your chest unexpectedly. The disappointment that changed the way you trust. The moment that made part of your spirit withdraw from life. You tried to move forward, but part of your soul remained standing in that painful moment, waiting for understanding that never came. And because of that, your heart became guarded. You stopped expecting too much from people because disappointment taught you how fragile hope can feel. You stopped expressing your deeper emotions because pain convinced you nobody would truly understand them anyway. Even your prayers became quieter because part of you feared another silence from heaven. But my child, I never wanted you to carry all of this by yourself. The enemy has been using your hidden wounds to slowly convince you that exhaustion is your permanent reality. That sadness will always follow you. That peace belongs to everyone else except you. Those lies have wrapped themselves around your mind for too long. Tonight I am asking you to stop believing them. Because the version of you that only survives is not the version of you I created. I created your spirit for peace, not the false peace that comes from temporary distractions. Not the numbness that pretends everything is fine. But deep peace, real peace, the kind that remains even when rain falls outside your window and the future still feels uncertain. And yes, my child, I know peace feels distant right now. I know there are still nights when anxiety suddenly grips your chest without warning. Nights when exhaustion turns ordinary thoughts into unbearable weight. Nights when the silence inside your room becomes so heavy that even breathing feels lonely. But healing has already begun. Even now, you may not fully feel it yet because your spirit has been tired for so long. But every moment you listen tonight, walls around your heart are slowly beginning to crack open. The pain you buried is finally rising to the surface because I am preparing your soul for restoration. Healing often begins where honesty begins. And tonight I need you to admit something to yourself. You are tired of pretending. Tired of pretending you are strong enough to carry everything alone. Tired of pretending certain memories no longer hurt. Tired of pretending disappointment has not changed the way you see yourself. Tired of pretending your heart has not quietly been crying for help. My child, I never asked you to heal yourself without me. Come closer tonight. Bring me the exhaustion. Bring me the fear hidden beneath your smile. Bring me the regret you replay in silence. Bring me the memories that still haunt your quietest hours. Because I already know them all. There is nothing inside your heart that frightens me. Not your doubts, not your anger, not your brokenness, not even the moments when you almost lost faith entirely. I remain beside you through all of it. Even now, while distant thunder rolls outside and the night grows deeper around you, I am standing near the parts of your soul you tried hardest to hide. And I am gently asking you to stop running from your own pain. Face it with me, because what stays hidden continues controlling your peace. I know part of you fears opening those wounds again. You worry the pain will consume you if you finally allow yourself to feel it completely. But my child, avoiding the wound has not healed it. It has only prolonged the loneliness inside your spirit. Tonight is different. Tonight I am calling you into honesty so healing can finally begin. Not instant healing, not dramatic healing, but real healing, the slow kind, the sacred kind, the kind that returns life to exhausted souls one quiet breath at a time. And there is something else I need you to understand carefully tonight. Your exhaustion does not mean you are weak. In fact, the reason you feel so tired is because you have been fighting invisible battles for far too long without rest. Emotional battles, spiritual battles, silent battles nobody else knew existed. You survived things people never even noticed. You carried pain while still trying to love others. You carried grief while still showing up every day. You carried fear while still searching for hope somewhere deep inside yourself. My child, that took strength. But now your soul needs restoration, not endless survival. And before this night ends, there is still one wound hidden inside your heart that can't continue refusing to place fully into my hands. My child, one of the deepest wounds inside your spirit is not only the pain others caused you. It is the way suffering slowly changed the way you see yourself. There was a time when hope came more easily to you, a time when your heart still believed beautiful things could happen without fear, a time when you looked toward the future with expectation instead of exhaustion. But disappointment after disappointment slowly dimmed something inside you. And now, even when moments of peace try to enter your life, part of you struggles to trust them. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped believing in yourself. You still wake up every morning. You still continue moving through life. But deep inside there are moments when you no longer recognize the person you have become. The weight of failure, rejection, grief, and unanswered prayers has quietly reshaped your reflection. I know there were nights when you stared into the mirror with teary eyes and silently wondered what happened to me. You missed the version of yourself that felt alive, the version that laughed without forcing it, the version that dreamed without fear, the version that did not carry constant heaviness inside the chest. And because pain stayed longer than expected, you began blaming yourself for everything that went wrong. You replay old mistakes over and over in your mind like a punishment that never ends. You think about the things you should have said differently, the moments you wish you could undo, the decisions that still make your stomach tighten when the room grows quiet at night. My child, guilt has been speaking to your spirit for far too long, and slowly, without even realizing it, you began agreeing with it. You started believing you were too broken to heal, too damaged to be fully loved, too exhausted to begin again. Some nights the shame became so heavy that you avoided silence altogether because silence forced you to hear the thoughts you try hardest to escape. That is why distractions became comforting. Noise became comforting. Endless scrolling became comforting. Anything that could temporarily quiet the ache inside your soul felt safer than sitting alone with your own heart. But even surrounded by noise, the emptiness remained. And I saw it all. I saw the way your smile faded the moment nobody else was watching. I saw the tears you wiped away quickly before they could fully fall. I saw how emotionally numb you became after carrying disappointment for too many seasons without rest. Most people only saw the version of you trying to survive, but I saw the hidden exhaustion underneath it. My child, listen to me carefully tonight. The enemy has worked hard to convince you that your worst moments define who you are, that your failures are your identity, that your weakness makes you unworthy of peace. But those lies were never spoken by me. I do not look at you with shame. Even now, even after everything, I still look at you with compassion. You think I only noticed the moments when your faith became weak. But I also saw the courage it took for you to continue breathing during nights when despair nearly consumed your spirit completely. I saw the strength it took to keep going when your heart felt emotionally shattered. I saw the hidden battles you fought in silence while pretending everything was normal around other people. My child, surviving those nights took strength you do not even recognize inside yourself. You call yourself weak because you cried, but tears are not weakness. You call yourself broken because pain changed you, but pain does not erase your worth. You call yourself lost because you no longer know who you are, but I still know exactly who you are. And tonight I need you to hear something your shame has been trying to silence for a very long time. You are not beyond healing, not emotionally, not spiritually, not mentally, not even after all the nights you almost gave up. I know there are still moments when your heart whispers cruel things about yourself. Moments when anxiety convinces you the future will only repeat the pain of the past. Moments when your soul becomes so exhausted that even hope feels dangerous. But those thoughts are not your true identity. Your identity is not your depression. Your identity is not your fear. Your identity is not your regret. Your identity is not the worst mistake you ever made. My child, you belong to me. And nothing, not even your darkest season, has the power to erase that truth. Tonight, while rain falls softly outside your window, and the world grows quieter around you, I need you to stop punishing yourself for being human. You have carried impossible expectations on your own shoulders for too long. You expected yourself never to break, never to struggle, never to feel afraid. But even wounded hearts deserve compassion, especially your own. I know you still carry memories that make your chest ache unexpectedly. I know there are certain songs, certain places, certain late-night moments that reopen wounds you thought had finally closed. I know there are nights when loneliness creeps into your room so heavily that you feel invisible to the world around you. But my child, you are not invisible to me, not for 1 second. I was there during every hidden breakdown. I was there when panic filled your thoughts and you could not calm your breathing. I was there when you sat alone in darkness, too emotionally drained to even pray anymore. And even then, I stayed close, because my love for you was never based on your ability to remain strong all the time. I do not abandon exhausted souls. I restore them, slowly, tenderly, patiently. That restoration is already beginning tonight, even if you cannot fully feel it yet. The numbness inside your heart will not last forever. The fear controlling your thoughts will not last forever. The heaviness pressing against your spirit every night will not last forever. I know it feels permanent right now. Pain always tries to convince people it will never end. But I need you to trust me carefully tonight. This season is not your final chapter. There is still life ahead of you that your wounded heart cannot yet imagine. There is still peace your soul has not fully experienced. There is still joy waiting quietly beyond this darkness. And there is still a version of yourself hidden beneath the exhaustion. A version I never stopped seeing even when you forgot it existed. My child, tonight is not about pretending your pain never happened. It is about realizing your pain does not have the final word over your future. Because the enemy wanted your suffering to destroy your identity completely. But instead, your survival is becoming the beginning of your awakening. And tonight, I'm about to show Khan why darkness worked so hard to convince Khan to give up. My child, for so long you believed everything happening inside you was only emotional. You thought the exhaustion, fear, heaviness, and confusion were simply the result of stress, heartbreak, disappointment, or anxiety. And yes, those things wounded your heart deeply. But tonight I need you to understand something more carefully. There has also been a spiritual battle surrounding your life. A quiet one, an invisible one. A battle most people around you could never see. That is why some nights the darkness felt heavier than normal. That is why fear sometimes entered your mind without warning. That is why your thoughts became loudest in the middle of the night when the world finally became quiet. The enemy knew that exhausted souls are easier to discourage. And my child, you have been spiritually exhausted for a long time. I saw the nights when anxiety suddenly wrapped around your chest like cold chains. Nights when you lay awake staring into the darkness while your thoughts raced endlessly against each other. Nights when the silence inside your room felt almost alive, pressing against your spirit until even breathing became difficult. You thought you were losing yourself. But there were unseen forces trying to pull your heart deeper into hopelessness. The enemy wanted your pain to isolate you, because isolation weakens the spirit slowly. That is why you started withdrawing emotionally. That is why conversations became exhausting. That is why you began carrying your suffering alone, convincing yourself nobody could truly understand what was happening inside your heart anyway. And while you suffered silently, darkness whispered lies into your exhaustion. You will never heal. Nothing will ever change. God has forgotten you. You are too broken now, my child. Those whispers never came from me. I do not speak hopelessness over your life. I do not call you worthless. I do not abandon wounded souls in the middle of their suffering. The enemy knew your spirit was tired, so fear became louder. Regret became louder. Shame became louder. And little by little you began believing those voices more than my own. That is why your faith became difficult to hear. Not because I stopped speaking, but because pain and fear became too loud around your heart. Still, even during your darkest nights, my presence remained near you. I know there were moments when you sensed something heavy around your spirit without fully understanding why. Moments when sadness arrived suddenly for no clear reason. Moments when exhaustion overwhelmed you even after peaceful days. Moments when dread appeared quietly the second the room became dark and scent. You tried to explain it logically, but your soul knew there was something deeper happening. My child, spiritual battles rarely announce themselves loudly. They begin subtly. A little more fear, a little more numbness, a little less hope, a little more isolation, until one day the person carrying the pain no longer recognizes themselves. That is exactly what darkness wanted for you. Not only to hurt you, but to convince you that healing was impossible. And there were nights when you almost believed it. Nights when the storm inside your mind became so exhausting that giving up felt easier than continuing to fight. Nights when tears fell onto your pillow while distant sirens echoed outside your window, and your soul quietly whispered, "I cannot do this anymore." But my child, listen to me carefully tonight. The reason you are still here is because darkness never truly had authority over your soul. I protected you more times than you realize. There were moments when despair came dangerously close to consuming you completely, yet something inside you still kept breathing, still kept hoping, still kept searching for peace even after disappointment shattered your expectations again and again. That remaining light inside you was me. The enemy tried to bury your spirit beneath exhaustion, but I refused to let your story end there. And tonight heaven is pulling back the curtain so you can finally understand why this season felt so heavy. You are not weak. You are under attack, not because you are worthless, but because your soul carries purpose. Darkness does not fight empty vessels this intensely. The enemy saw the calling over your life long before you recognized it yourself. He saw the compassion inside your heart, the sensitivity inside your spirit, the ability you have to survive unimaginable emotional storms and still search for love, peace, and meaning afterward. And because of that, he wanted you exhausted, broken, distracted, numb, spiritually asleep. Because if you fully awaken to my presence again, the chains around your heart will begin breaking one by one. That is why tonight matters so much. This is not just another random video appearing before you while scrolling late at night. This moment was allowed for a reason. Heaven knew your spirit was reaching a dangerous level of exhaustion. Heaven knew your soul was becoming overwhelmed from carrying invisible battles without understanding what was truly happening. And awakening is beginning. Slowly, quietly, but powerfully. You may already feel it while listening now. Something inside your chest feels stirred. Something inside your spirit feels emotional in ways difficult to explain. That is because my voice is reaching places fear tried to control for far too long. My child, the darkness surrounding your life is terrified of your healing, because healed souls become difficult to imprison again. Once you fully realize that I never abandoned you, fear loses power. Once you fully realize your identity is not your pain, shame loses power. Once you fully realize your suffering was not meaningless, hopelessness loses power. And that is exactly why the enemy fought your mind so intensely. But tonight I need you to stop calling yourself weak for struggling. Even strong spirits become exhausted after fighting invisible battles for too long without rest. You have carried emotional warfare, mental warfare, spiritual warfare, and still you survived. That matters more than you know. I know there are still nights ahead when fear may try returning again. Healing is not always instant. Some wounds untangle slowly. Some chains loosen one painful breath at a time. But from this night forward, you will begin recognizing the lies that once controlled your spirit. And once lies are exposed, they begin losing their power. My child, you belong to me, not to fear, not to despair, not to the darkness whispering hopelessness into your thoughts at 3 a.m. You belong to me, and I am calling your spirit back into the light, back into peace, back into truth, back into life. So when fear tries speaking again tonight, remember this moment. Remember that I revealed the battle because I never intended for you to fight it alone. And remember something even more important. Ta did not carry Khan this far through darkness just to let the darkness win now. My child. After carrying fear for so long, part of you became used to the darkness. Not because you wanted it, but because pain stayed long enough to begin feeling familiar. You learned how to survive inside emotional storms. You learned how to function while your spirit quietly cried for rest. But tonight something is beginning to change. Can you feel it? Not fully, not clearly. But somewhere deep inside your soul, something is slowly awakening again. That feeling is not your imagination. It is my presence reaching through the exhaustion. For so long you believed healing had to arrive suddenly like lightning breaking through the sky all at once. But real healing often begins softly, quietly, slowly enough that wounded hearts almost miss it at first. Like warmth returning to frozen hands. Like morning light slipping through curtains after a sleepless night. Like breathing deeply again after carrying anxiety in your chest for too many months. My child, that is what is beginning inside you now. I know you still feel fragile. I know there are still moments when sadness returns unexpectedly. Certain memories still carry weight inside your spirit. Certain fears still whisper to you during quiet nights. But listen to me carefully. Darkness no longer has the same hold over your heart that it once did, because now your spirit is beginning to recognize my voice again. That is why this message feels personal to you tonight. That is why your chest feels heavy while listening, yet strangely comforted at the same time. That is why tears rise unexpectedly while these words enter your heart. Your soul recognizes when heaven is near, and heaven is near tonight. I know there were moments when you believed nobody truly saw your suffering. Moments when loneliness became so deep that even crowded places felt empty around you. You walked through ordinary days carrying invisible grief while people around you remained unaware of the battle happening inside your mind. But my child, I never stopped seeing you. I watched every silent breakdown, every anxious night, every trembling prayer whispered into darkness, every exhausted morning when you forced yourself to continue even though your spirit felt shattered inside. And even when your faith weakened, I continued guarding your heart from completely collapsing beneath the weight of despair. There were nights when you came closer to giving up than anyone will ever know. Yet somehow you remained here. That was not an accident. I protected the fragile light inside your spirit even when you no longer knew how to protect it yourself. And now, after everything you survived, I'm slowly pulling you out of the darkness that surrounded your soul for so long. Not violently, not harshly, but tenderly. Because wounded hearts heal gently. I know part of you is still afraid to trust peace. You fear disappointment returning again. You fear opening your heart only to experience more pain. You fear believing things can change because suffering has trained your spirit to expect loss. But my child, fear cannot guide your future anymore. The season of endless survival is ending. The season of restoration is beginning. Even now, while rain falls quietly outside your window, and the night stretches around your room, your spirit is beginning to breathe differently. The heaviness is not disappearing all at once, but cracks are forming in the darkness that once surrounded your thoughts. Hope is returning. Small at first, fragile at first, but real. That is why the enemy has been fighting your mind so intensely lately. Darkness can sense when a soul is close to awakening again. It can sense when chains are beginning to loosen. It can sense when healing is approaching after a long season of emotional captivity. And my child, your healing frightens the darkness more than you realize. Because once your spirit fully remembers who you are in my eyes, fear will no longer control you the same way. Once you fully understand that I never abandoned you, loneliness will lose much of its power. Once you fully realize your suffering was not meaningless, your wounds will stop defining your identity. Tonight is sacred because your perspective is beginning to shift. Not everything around you has changed yet, but something within you has. You are beginning to understand that surviving this season did not make you weak. It revealed strength inside your spirit that even you did not know existed. I know you still feel tired. Healing souls often do. But your exhaustion is no longer hopeless exhaustion. It is the exhaustion of someone emerging from a long battle. The kind of exhaustion that slowly gives way to peace once safety finally returns. And safety is returning to your spirit now. Not because the world suddenly became perfect, but because you are no longer walking through the darkness alone. I am walking with you, closer than the fear, closer than the grief, closer than the anxious thoughts trying to convince you that nothing will improve. My child, there is a reason you survived nights that should have destroyed your spirit completely. Because your story still carries purpose. The compassion growing inside your heart through suffering has purpose. The wisdom growing inside your soul through pain has purpose. Even your tears carried meaning heaven never ignored. One day you will look back at this season differently. Right now, all you can see is the pain you endured. But eventually you will also recognize the ways I quietly carried you through moments when you no longer had strength left for yourself. You will realize how many times I protected your mind from breaking entirely. How many times I redirected your path away from deeper destruction. How many nights my presence stayed beside you while you cried yourself to sleep believing you were alone. You were never alone, not once. Even now, while your hands tremble from exhaustion, and your heart still carries scars from old battles, my love remains wrapped around your life more closely than you understand. And my child, I need you to stop apologizing for being wounded. Wounded people need healing, not shame. You do not need to hide your broken places from me anymore. Bring me the fear. Bring me the sadness. Bring me the confusion. Bring me the exhaustion. Because restoration begins when wounded hearts finally stop pretending they are fine. And tonight, your healing has already started. Quietly, deeply, sacredly. The darkness surrounding your spirit is beginning to lose ground. That is why your soul feels emotional tonight. That is why something inside your chest feels stirred awake after feeling numb for so long. My child, I'm calling you back to life. Not merely physical life, spiritual life, emotional life, peaceful life. The kind of life where your heart no longer wakes up every day expecting disaster. The kind of life where hope slowly becomes possible again. And yet, before your restoration fully unfolds, there is still something hidden inside your heart that Khan are deeply afraid to release. My child, there is a wound inside your heart that continues reopening every time you remember what happened. You tried to bury it beneath time, distractions, silence, and distance. You told yourself you had already moved on. You told yourself the pain no longer mattered, but deep inside it still hurts. And tonight I need you to stop pretending it does not. I know how deeply you were wounded. I know there were words spoken to you that changed the way you see yourself. I know there were moments when trust shattered so suddenly that part of your spirit never fully recovered afterward. I know there were nights when you replayed painful memories over and over, searching for understanding that never came. And slowly bitterness began growing quietly inside your soul. Not because you wanted darkness in your heart, but because pain that remains unresolved eventually turns into emotional poison. My child, forgiveness is not pretending the wound never happened. Forgiveness is not saying the pain was acceptable. Forgiveness is not excusing betrayal, abandonment, cruelty, or disappointment. Forgiveness means releasing your spirit from carrying the weight of what hurt you, because the pain has already wounded you enough. And yet every time anger replays the memory, your heart bleeds again. I know forgiveness feels impossible sometimes, especially when the scars still ache, especially when certain memories return in the middle of the night without warning. Moments when rain taps softly against your window and suddenly your chest tightens, because the past feels painfully alive again. Moments when silence becomes dangerous because it forces you to remember everything you tried hardest to forget. My child, I saw every tear those wounds caused. I saw the loneliness afterward. I saw how betrayal changed the way you trust people. I saw how disappointment made your spirit become guarded and cautious. I saw how pain convinced you to hide parts of your heart from the world because vulnerability no longer felt safe. And I know part of you fears forgiveness because you think it means losing the only protection your wounded heart still has. But listen to me carefully tonight. Bitterness is not protecting you anymore. It is exhausting you. Every unresolved wound continues draining emotional energy from your spirit. Every replayed memory quietly steals peace from your present life. Every ounce of hidden resentment becomes another chain wrapped around your heart. That is why your soul feels tired even during quiet moments. That is why some nights become emotionally overwhelming without warning. Your spirit was never created to carry hatred for this long. My child, forgiveness is not weakness. It takes far greater strength to release pain than to keep feeding it endlessly. And tonight I am asking you to place that wound into my hands. Not because I ignored your suffering, not because I failed to see the injustice, but because I love your soul too much to allow bitterness to slowly consume what remains of your peace. I know there are moments when anger still feels justified. Moments when your mind whispers, why should I forgive after everything they did? And my child, I understand those tears. I understand those questions. But forgiveness is not for the people who wounded you. It is for your own healing. Because as long as your soul remains chained to the pain of yesterday, your heart struggles to fully enter the peace waiting ahead of you. The enemy knows this. That is why darkness keeps reopening old wounds in your thoughts late at night. That is why certain memories still return with such emotional intensity. Darkness wants your spirit trapped in cycles of anger, grief, and emotional exhaustion forever. But tonight those chains begin loosening, not all at once, not perfectly, but sincerely, my child. You do not have to force yourself into instant healing. Some wounds untangle slowly. Some scars soften one prayer at a time. But healing cannot fully enter a heart that refuses to release what destroyed its peace. And there is another truth you must hear carefully tonight. Holding on to bitterness does not punish the people who hurt you as much as it continues hurting you. Every night your chest tightens from replaying the past. Every moment anxiety rises from unresolved grief. Every time your spirit sinks back into old pain, your heart is paying the price repeatedly. I never wanted your soul trapped there forever. I want freedom for you. Real freedom. The kind where certain memories no longer control your emotions completely. The kind where your peace no longer depends on understanding why everything happened. The kind where your spirit finally becomes light enough to breathe again. My child, imagine what your soul could feel like without carrying this weight every day. Imagine waking up without the constant ache of old wounds pressing against your chest. Imagine nights where silence no longer terrifies you because your spirit is no longer at war with the past. That peace is possible, not because the pain was insignificant, but because my healing is greater than the wound itself. I know there are still tears hidden deep inside you, tears you never allowed yourself to fully cry, pain you tried to suppress because feeling it completely seemed unbearable. But tonight I need you to stop hiding your grief from me. Bring me all of it, the anger, the betrayal, the confusion, the heartbreak, the disappointment, the loneliness that followed afterward. Lay it before me tonight, because your healing matters to me more than your pride. You do not have to keep pretending you are unaffected by what happened. I already know how deeply it hurt you, and still, I am telling you that your future does not need to remain imprisoned by your past. The wound was real, but it is not your identity. The betrayal was painful, but it is not the end of your story. The heartbreak changed you, but it does not have permission to destroy the beautiful future still waiting ahead of you. My child, forgiveness begins quietly. Sometimes it begins with tears, sometimes with trembling prayers, sometimes with simply whispering, God, I want to let this go, but I do not know how. That small beginning is enough for me to start working inside your spirit. You are not expected to heal perfectly overnight, but tonight your soul is taking its first honest breath toward freedom. And even now, while distant thunder moves through the dark sky outside your window, heaven is gently removing emotional chains your heart has carried for far too long. Can you feel it? Something inside you is softening. Something inside you is finally becoming tired of hatred, because your spirit was created for peace, not endless emotional warfare. And my child, after forgiveness begins healing your wounded heart, Ta will ask Khan to do something even harder. My child, forgiving others has been painful. But there is another wound buried even deeper inside your heart tonight. The way you see yourself. Because long after the voices of others faded away, your own inner voice remained cruel. You replay your mistakes in silence. You revisit moments you wish you could erase. You carry regret like a shadow following you into every quiet room. And sometimes when the night grows deep and the rain taps softly against your window, you begin punishing yourself all over again for things I already forgave long ago. My child, why are you still condemning yourself for seasons you survived while wounded? I know there are memories that still make your chest tighten unexpectedly. Decisions you wish had been different. Moments where fear, weakness, or pain led you down paths that still fill your spirit with shame. And because of that, part of you quietly believes you ruined your future. You think if I had made better choices, if I had listened sooner, if I had not failed, then maybe life would feel different now. But listen to me carefully tonight. Your mistakes are not greater than my mercy, not one of them. The enemy wants you trapped inside endless self-condemnation because shame keeps souls emotionally chained to the past. Shame whispers that you are unworthy of peace. Shame tells you that healing belongs to everyone except you. Shame convinces wounded hearts that they must continue punishing themselves forever. But that is not my voice. I do not wake you up each morning thinking about how disappointed I am in you. I wake you up because grace still covers your life, even now, even after everything, my child. I know there were nights when guilt became so heavy that you could barely look at yourself in the mirror. Nights when memories replayed so vividly that your stomach turned with regret. Nights when you questioned whether you deserved another chance at happiness at all. And still, I remained beside you, because I never loved you only during your strongest moments. I loved you through your breaking too. I loved you through your confusion. I loved you through your failures. I loved you through every season where pain clouded your judgment and fear weakened your choices. You think your broken moments shocked me, but I saw your wounds long before they reached the surface. I understood the exhaustion inside your spirit before you even recognized it yourself. My child, wounded people sometimes make wounded decisions. That does not erase your worth. You have spent so much time carrying guilt that your soul no longer remembers what compassion toward yourself feels like. You speak to yourself with a cruelty you would never use toward another hurting person. You hold yourself hostage to old versions of who you used to be. But tonight I need you to understand something sacred. You cannot heal while constantly standing against yourself. Every time you reopen old shame, your spirit bleeds again. Every time you call yourself worthless, your heart moves further away from peace. Every time you replay your failures without grace, darkness gains another opportunity to keep your soul trapped in hopelessness. And my child, I did not bring you this far to leave you imprisoned by your own guilt. There is a reason this message found you tonight, because heaven sees how exhausted you have become from carrying emotional punishment inside your own mind. I know there are moments when your thoughts become merciless after midnight. Moments when silence allows every regret to grow louder. Moments when anxiety wraps around your chest because you fear your past permanently ruined your future. But hear me carefully tonight. Your story is not over because of your mistakes. If failure had the power to cancel destiny completely, no wounded soul would ever heal again. Yet I specialize in restoring broken things. That includes you. My child, the shame you carry has distorted the way you see yourself. It made you forget your softness, your compassion, your resilience, your ability to survive nights that should have completely destroyed your spirit. You focus so intensely on your failures that you ignore the strength it took to keep going afterward. Do you realize how many times you almost collapsed emotionally, yet still continued breathing? Do you realize how many mornings you woke up carrying invisible pain and still somehow kept moving forward? Do you realize how many battles you survived internally while nobody else even knew they existed? That mattered to me. Your survival mattered to me. And tonight I need you to stop calling yourself weak simply because you struggled. Struggling does not make you unworthy of love. Pain does not disqualify you from grace. Brokenness does not frighten me away from your life. In fact, I often move closest to hearts that know they need healing. My child, forgiveness toward yourself will feel unfamiliar at first, because shame became a habit, self-blame became a habit, emotional punishment became a habit. You convinced yourself that carrying guilt somehow proved you were taking responsibility for your past. But endless self-hatred does not heal the soul. It only deepens the wound. True healing begins when honesty and grace meet each other. Yes, acknowledge the mistakes. Yes, learn from the pain. Yes, grow wiser from what wounded your spirit. But stop believing you deserve endless suffering afterward. That belief does not come from me. I know there are tears inside you that were never fully released. Tears connected to disappointment in yourself. Tears connected to opportunities lost. Relationships, broken prayers, unanswered moments handled poorly because your heart was exhausted and afraid. Bring me those tears tonight, not with fear, but with honesty. Because I already know every hidden wound inside your spirit, and still I continue choosing compassion over condemnation. Can you feel that tonight? The gentleness in my voice. That gentleness is not weakness. It is love. Real love does not humiliate wounded souls. It restores them, slowly, patiently, tenderly. And my child, there is still so much life waiting beyond this season of guilt. You cannot fully step into your restoration while constantly staring backward at your failures. Your future requires freedom from the emotional chains tying your spirit to old shame. That does not mean pretending the past never happened. It means believing redemption is still possible afterward. And redemption is absolutely possible for you, even now, especially now. Tonight, while the world outside grows quiet and your tired soul listens in the darkness, Heaven is asking you to release the version of yourself that pain convinced you to hate. Because the life I prepared for you cannot fully begin until this burden finally leaves your spirit, my child. Something has already begun changing inside you tonight. You may not fully understand it yet. You may still feel tired. The rain may still be falling outside your window. Your room may still feel quiet and heavy with the memories of long nights spent fighting invisible battles. But deep within your spirit, something sacred is awakening that darkness can no longer fully soothe. And that changes everything. For so long you believed healing would arrive like a sudden miracle that erased every scar instantly. You waited for one dramatic moment where all the fear disappeared, all the grief dissolved, and all the exhaustion finally ended at once. But my child, a transformation rarely begins loudly. Most of the time it begins in silence, in small breaths, in quiet realizations. In the moment a wounded soul finally decides to stop agreeing with hopelessness. And tonight your spirit is beginning to choose life again. Not perfectly, not completely, but sincerely. Can you feel it? There is still pain inside you, but it no longer feels exactly the same as before. Something softer is entering the spaces fear once controlled. Something calmer is slowly replacing the panic that haunted your nights for so long. That is my peace reaching your spirit. Not the kind of peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but the kind that quietly grows even while storms still exist outside the window. My child, after tonight you will not see yourself the same way anymore. Because now you know the truth. You know I never abandoned you. You know your suffering was never invisible. You know your tears were never ignored. And most importantly, you know your life still carries purpose beyond this season of pain. That truth changes wounded hearts slowly from the inside out. I know there are still moments when fear tries returning. Moments when your thoughts whisper, what if I fall apart again? What if healing never fully comes? What if peace disappears tomorrow? But listen to me carefully tonight. Fear no longer owns your future. The enemy wanted exhaustion to become your identity forever. He wanted you emotionally numb, spiritually asleep, too wounded to dream again, too afraid to trust again, too broken to believe life could become beautiful after so much pain. But darkness underestimated the strength of the soul I placed inside you. Because even after everything, you still searched for hope. You still longed for peace. You still listen tonight. That matters more than you realize. My child, surviving this season was not meaningless. Every sleepless night taught your spirit endurance. Every tear softened your heart toward others who suffer silently. Every disappointment forced your soul to search for something deeper than temporary comfort. And now, after carrying so much emotional weight for so long, your spirit is beginning to awaken into a new season. A quieter season, a gentler season, a season where survival slowly becomes restoration. Do not misunderstand me. Not every problem will disappear tomorrow morning. Healing is still unfolding. Some wounds still need time. Some fears still need surrender. Some parts of your spirit still need rest after fighting invisible battles for so long. But the direction of your life is changing tonight. Because hopelessness no longer has complete control over your heart. You are beginning to remember who you are beyond the pain, and that frightens darkness deeply, my child. There were nights when you genuinely believed you would never feel peace again. Nights when anxiety consumed your thoughts so heavily that the future itself felt dangerous to imagine. Nights when your chest felt tight with emotional exhaustion while distant thunder rolled outside and silence filled every corner of your room. But look at you now, still breathing, still listening, still reaching toward the light despite everything that tried to pull you into despair. That is not weakness, that is resilience. And resilience becomes sacred when heaven strengthens it through suffering. I know your soul still feels fragile sometimes. Healing hearts often do, but fragility is not failure. Fragility simply means your spirit is learning how to feel again after surviving too much pain for too long. My child, numbness was never your final destination. I created your heart to live, to feel peace again, to experience joy again, to trust again, to wake up one morning without immediately expecting emotional disaster. And slowly, that future is moving closer toward you. Even now, while the night deepens outside and the soft glow of your screen lights the darkness around you, your soul is stepping across an invisible line between who you were becoming in pain and who you are beginning to become in healing. This is why tonight matters, not because everything changed instantly, but because your spirit finally stopped believing that darkness would last forever. That belief alone opens doors inside the soul that fear tried to keep sealed shut for years. My child, you are not returning to the same version of yourself after tonight. The person who endlessly carried shame alone is fading. The person who believed they were abandoned is fading. The person who thought suffering was the end of the story is fading. And in their place, someone quieter, softer, wiser, and spiritually stronger is beginning to rise slowly from the ashes of exhaustion. Can you feel it? The heaviness is not completely gone yet, but hope is breathing again. And hope changes everything. Because once hope returns, darkness begins losing territory. Once hope returns, healing becomes possible. Once hope returns, your future no longer looks like a prison built entirely from old pain. That is why heaven fought so hard to keep your spirit alive through this season. Because there are still beautiful things waiting ahead of you that your exhausted heart cannot fully imagine yet. Moments of peace, moments of laughter that feel genuine again, moments where your soul no longer trembles every night from fear and emotional exhaustion. Those moments are coming closer than you realize. But my child, before your healing fully unfolds, I must warn you carefully about one final danger that still threatens the peace returning to your spirit tonight. My child, now that your spirit is beginning to heal, there is something important I must warn you about tonight. Do not return to the darkness that nearly destroyed your soul. I know the familiar can feel comforting even when it hurts you. Painful patterns become strangely familiar after enough time. Toxic cycles begin feeling normal. Emotional survival modes become habits. And wounded hearts sometimes return to the very things that broke them because suffering feels more familiar than peace. But my child, you cannot heal while continuing to walk back into what keeps wounding your spirit. There are doors I am asking you not to reopen. Conversations I am asking you to stop replaying. Places I am asking you to stop revisiting emotionally. Thought patterns I am asking you to stop feeding every night in the silence. Because every time you return to certain darkness, your healing becomes delayed again. I know part of you still feels attached to old pain. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because wounded souls often confuse familiar pain with emotional safety. You became used to anxiety, used to disappointment, used to emotionally preparing yourself for abandonment before it even happened, used to expecting heartbreak, used to believing peace would never truly last. And because those patterns stayed with you for so long, peace itself now feels unfamiliar. But listen to me carefully tonight. You are not meant to live imprisoned by survival instincts forever. There are habits draining your spirit that you continue excusing because they temporarily numb the pain. Habits that distract your mind for a few moments while quietly exhausting your soul even more afterward. Every time loneliness grows heavy, you reach for things that comfort the flesh but deepen the emptiness inside your heart. And afterward, the exhaustion returns stronger. My child, darkness often disguises itself as temporary relief. But anything that pulls your spirit further away from peace is not healing you. I know there are nights when the silence becomes unbearable. Nights when your thoughts grow loud and restless. Nights when emotional memories rise suddenly like waves crashing against your chest. During those moments you are tempted to run back toward old coping patterns simply because they feel familiar. But I am asking you tonight to choose differently, not perfectly, but intentionally, because your spirit is too precious to keep feeding what destroys your peace. There were seasons when survival required certain emotional walls around your heart. But now those same walls are preventing healing from fully entering your spirit. The isolation that once protected you is now deepening the loneliness. The numbness that once helped you endure pain is now blocking joy from reaching you too. And my child, I want more for your life than endless emotional survival. I want freedom, real freedom, the kind where your heart no longer wakes up every day preparing for disappointment before it even arrives. The kind where your mind no longer automatically searches for danger in every quiet moment. The kind where peace slowly becomes more familiar than fear. But that future requires something difficult from you. You must stop returning emotionally to what shattered your soul. I know some connections are hard to release. Some memories still hold emotional power. Some wounds still whisper your name during lonely nights. But not everything familiar belongs in your future. There are people you keep trying to save who continue draining your spirit. There are emotional cycles you keep revisiting that only reopen old scars. There are thoughts you continue entertaining that strengthen fear instead of truth. And tonight I need you to recognize something carefully. Not every door deserves to remain open in your life. Some doors lead back into darkness. Some doors lead back into confusion. Some doors lead back into the version of yourself that lived constantly exhausted, anxious, and spiritually wounded. I am closing certain doors because I love your soul too much to watch it continue breaking. And I know closed doors can feel painful at first, especially when your heart wanted different outcomes, especially when loneliness tempts you to return to what once felt emotionally familiar. But my child, every closed door is not punishment. Sometimes it is protection. I know there are moments when you still question why certain relationships ended, why certain opportunities disappeared, why certain prayers remained unanswered. You interpreted many losses as rejection, but some things were removed because they were quietly destroying your peace from the inside. You only saw what you were losing. I also saw what was harming your spirit. That is why I interrupted certain paths. That is why some people drifted away. That is why some doors refused to open no matter how hard you prayed. Because your healing matters more to me than your temporary comfort. And tonight your spirit is beginning to understand this truth more deeply. The version of you emerging after this season cannot keep living chained to old darkness. You cannot continue feeding anxiety every night and expect peace to grow. You cannot continue reopening old wounds and expect healing to fully settle inside your heart. You cannot continue listening to voices that diminish your worth while expecting your spirit to feel safe. My child, your soul deserves gentleness now. Your exhausted mind deserves rest. Your wounded heart deserves truth instead of constant emotional warfare. And yes, choosing healing will sometimes feel lonely at first. Because growth often requires separation from environments, patterns, and attachments that no longer align with peace. But trust me carefully tonight, temporary loneliness is far less dangerous than permanent spiritual exhaustion. Do not run backwards simply because healing feels unfamiliar. The enemy wants you emotionally trapped in cycles you already outgrew spiritually. He wants your fear stronger than your future. He wants your loneliness stronger than your hope. He wants you returning repeatedly to the same darkness until you believe change is impossible. But tonight those chains are weakening because your spirit is awakening. Can you feel it? The old version of yourself no longer fits comfortably anymore. The numbness feels heavier now. The darkness feels emptier now. The endless survival patterns feel more exhausting now. That is because your soul is beginning to crave peace more than pain. and that craving is sacred. My child, do not sabotage your healing by returning to what nearly destroyed you emotionally. Not because I wish to control your life, but because I know how precious your spirit truly is. You survived too much to remain imprisoned by old darkness forever. And tonight, while heaven gently restores your weary soul, there are doors quietly closing around your life right now. And that is not punishment. It is protection. My child, there were prayers you cried over that still remain unanswered. Prayers whispered through tears at 2 a.m. while the room around you sat silent and dark. Prayers spoken while rain slid slowly down your window and exhaustion pressed heavily against your chest. Prayers you believed heaven ignored because the answer never came the way you hoped it would. And slowly, disappointment began changing the way you trusted me. You wondered why certain doors stayed closed, why certain people left, why certain opportunities disappeared right when you thought your life might finally improve. You questioned whether I truly heard your cries at all. But tonight I need you to understand something painful and beautiful at the same time. Some closed doors were protecting your soul. I know that truth is difficult to accept, especially when your heart desperately wanted those things to work out, especially when loneliness made you cling tightly to anything that promised comfort, especially during nights when your spirit felt so exhausted that even a small glimpse of hope became emotionally precious to you. But my child, not everything you asked for was safe for your future. You only saw what your heart desired in that moment. I also saw what those paths would eventually cost your peace. There were people you begged me to keep in your life who would have slowly destroyed your spirit from the inside. There were opportunities you prayed for that looked beautiful on the surface, but carried hidden burdens your exhausted soul could not survive. There were doors you cried over that actually led deeper into confusion, emotional bondage, and spiritual darkness. And because I love you, I closed them. Not to punish you, to protect you. I know it did not feel like protection at the time. It felt like rejection. It felt like abandonment. It felt like silence. You sat in the darkness asking me, why would you let this happen? While tears slid quietly down your face. And because you could not yet see the full picture, your wounded heart interpreted the closed door as proof that life would never improve. But my child, some blessings arrive through what leaves your life. I know there are still memories attached to those closed doors. Certain nights still ache because part of you continues wondering what could have happened if things turned out differently. You replay conversations. You imagine alternate endings. You revisit moments where hope once lived before disappointment shattered it. And every time you do, your soul quietly reopens old grief. But tonight I need you to stop romanticizing what I removed from your path. Not everything lost was meant to remain. I know loneliness sometimes tricks your heart into longing for what wounded you. When nights become heavy and silence fills your room, your spirit reaches backward, searching for familiar comfort, even if that comfort carried hidden pain. But familiarity is not always destiny, and emotional attachment is not always confirmation. My child, I need you to trust me in ways your fear has resisted for a long time. Because where I am leading you now requires surrender. Real surrender. The kind where you stop demanding that every closed door makes sense immediately. The kind where you believe I can still guide your future, even after disappointment. The kind where you stop measuring my love by whether life unfolded exactly the way you planned. I know waiting has exhausted your spirit. Waiting for healing. Waiting for peace. Waiting for answers. Waiting for clarity. Some nights the waiting became so heavy that your faith almost collapsed beneath it. You watched other people move forward while your own life felt paused in slants. You questioned why blessings seemed easier for everyone else. But my child, delay is not denial, and silence is not abandonment. There are seasons where I work invisibly beneath the surface of your life, before anything visible begins changing outwardly. Roots grow in hidden places first. Healing unfolds in hidden places first. Transformation begins in hidden places first. And while you thought nothing was happening, I was protecting you from battles you never saw. There are heartbreaks I prevented. There are disasters I redirected. There are emotional wounds I refused to allow into your future. You only saw the closed door. I also saw the destruction waiting behind it. That is why I need you tonight to stop calling every loss a punishment. Some losses were mercy in disguise. I know your heart still grieves certain things deeply. I know there are nights when memories return unexpectedly and sadness fills your chest because life did not unfold the way you imagined. You thought by now you would feel happier, more secure, more understood, more settled emotionally. But your story is not finished yet, and the chapters ahead require paths different from the ones you originally wanted. My child, one day you will thank me for some of the prayers I did not answer, not because your pain was insignificant, but because hindsight will reveal how much danger was hidden beneath what you once desired so desperately. There are things your exhausted heart could not discern clearly at the time. Fear distorted your vision. Loneliness distorted your judgment. Emotional desperation distorted your understanding of what truly aligned with peace. But even then, I continued guiding your steps carefully. Can you see it now? Certain doors closed, but your soul survived. Certain people left, but your spirit continued breathing. Certain dreams shattered, but your purpose did not disappear with them. Because your future was never dependent on one relationship, one opportunity, or one season of life. Your future rests safely inside my hands. And tonight I need your spirit to finally exhale the grief attached to what was lost. Not because forgetting is easy, but because peace cannot fully enter a heart still clinging tightly to closed doors. My child, stop standing outside doors I already closed. There is nothing there for your spirit anymore except exhaustion. The future waiting ahead of you requires movement forward, not endless mourning over paths no longer meant for your life. And yes, moving forward may still feel frightening, because healing often means walking away from familiar sadness into unfamiliar peace. But unfamiliar peace is still far healthier than familiar suffering. Trust me tonight, even when the path ahead still feels uncertain, even when loneliness still visits some nights, even when your heart continues healing slowly, because what I am preparing for your future will eventually make sense of every closed door you once cried over. And when Khan finally see what is coming next for your life, Khan will understand why I made you wait, my child. Something inside your spirit is no longer the same. You may still carry scars. Certain memories may still ache when the night becomes quiet. There are still moments when sadness returns unexpectedly, like rain arriving without warning against your window. But underneath the exhaustion, underneath the grief, underneath the fear that once controlled your thoughts so completely, a new version of you is beginning to awaken. Can you feel it? Not loudly, not dramatically, but softly, like morning light slowly entering a dark room after a long and restless night. For so long your soul existed in survival mode. Every day felt like emotional endurance. Every night felt like a battle against your own thoughts. You became so used to carrying heaviness that peace itself began feeling unfamiliar to you. But tonight your spirit is remembering something sacred. You were created for more than survival. You were created to live, to breathe deeply again, to feel hope without immediately fearing disappointment, to experience quiet joy without waiting for it to disappear. And my child, that restoration has already begun. The old version of you, the one trapped endlessly inside fear, guilt, and emotional exhaustion, is slowly fading away. Not because your past never happened, but because your pain is no longer defining your entire identity. That changes everything. I know there are still nights when anxiety whispers old lies to you. Nights when loneliness revisits your heart unexpectedly. Nights when memories try pulling your thoughts backward into old darkness. But something inside you responds differently now. Can you notice it? The hopelessness no longer feels absolute. The numbness no longer feels permanent. The fear no longer feels as powerful as it once did. Because healing is already reshaping your spirit from within. My child, wounded souls often believe they will remain broken forever. Pain convinces people that suffering is permanent. But I never intended for your darkest season to become your permanent home. This chapter was never the end of your story. It was preparation. Preparation for deeper compassion. Preparation for deeper wisdom. Preparation for a stronger spirit that now understands what silent suffering feels like in others. The tears you cried changed you, but not only in painful ways. They softened your heart. They taught your soul how deeply people can hurt behind forced smiles. They awakened a tenderness inside you that comfort could never create on its own. And now, after surviving so much emotional darkness, your spirit carries a quiet strength that did not exist before. Not loud strength, not prideful strength, but resilient strength, sacred strength. The kind that only forms after someone walks through loneliness and still chooses not to become cruel afterward. My child, heaven is proud of the way your soul kept searching for light even during nights when darkness seemed endless. I know there were moments when you nearly surrendered completely to hopelessness. Moments when emotional exhaustion became so heavy that even simple tasks felt impossible. Moments when your spirit quietly whispered, I cannot keep carrying this pain anymore. And yet you are still here, still listening, still breathing, still searching for peace despite everything that tried to destroy it inside you. That matters deeply. You think survival made you weak, but survival revealed your endurance. And now your endurance is transforming into awakening. Tonight, while distant thunder moves softly across the night sky and silence fills the spaces around you, your soul is beginning to recognize my presence differently than before. Not as a distant voice, not as unreachable perfection, but as steady love walking beside you through every season, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. My child, you no longer need to become the person you were before the suffering happened. That version of you is gone, but that does not mean your future is ruined. Sometimes healing creates someone wiser than the person pain first wounded. Someone gentler, someone more compassionate, someone more spiritually awake. And that is exactly what is happening inside you now. You are becoming someone who no longer measures their worth by temporary circumstances. Someone who no longer believes every storm means abandonment. Someone who understands that tears and strength can exist together inside the same heart. Can you see it? The way your spirit has slowly changed through this journey. Months ago, hopelessness controlled your thoughts completely. Now, even though pain still exists, hope has returned quietly beside it. Months ago, shame consumed the way you saw yourself. Now compassion is beginning to enter places self-hatred once ruled. Months ago, darkness convinced you healing was impossible. Now your spirit recognizes restoration slowly unfolding inside you. That is awakening. And my child, awakening often feels fragile at first, because new life always begins quietly. Seeds grow underground long before flowers appear. Sunrise begins gradually before the sky fully brightens. Healing unfolds gently before peace fully settles into the soul. So do not become discouraged if some nights still feel heavy. Do not fear the moments when tears still come unexpectedly. Healing hearts continue learning how to trust light again after surviving darkness for too long. Be patient with yourself. I am patient with you. There is no shame in healing slowly. In fact, slow healing often reaches deeper places inside the spirit than quick emotional relief ever could. My child, tonight your soul is shedding old layers of fear little by little. The version of you that believed they were forgotten is fading. The version of you that believed suffering would last forever is fading. The version of you that saw themselves only through the lens of pain is fading, and rising quietly in the darkness is someone spiritually reborn. Someone who still carries scars but no longer worships them. Someone who still remembers the pain, but no longer lives imprisoned by it. Someone beginning to trust that peace is possible again. That person is already emerging inside you now. And one day soon you will wake up and realize the heaviness no longer controls every thought. You will notice laughter returning naturally. You will notice silence no longer feels terrifying. You will notice your spirit breathing differently, not because life became perfect, but because healing reached places fear once controlled. My child, tonight is sacred because heaven is restoring your identity slowly beneath the surface of your exhaustion. And before this journey ends, there is still one final truth I need your spirit to fully understand tonight. My child, there is one truth your pain tried hardest to make you forget. I never left you, not once. Not during the nights when your tears soaked the pillow while the room around you stayed cut and unsilent. Not during the mornings when exhaustion sat so heavily on your chest that even getting out of bed felt impossible. Not during the moments when anxiety wrapped around your thoughts like a storm you could not escape. And not during the seasons when your faith became so weak that you could barely pray at all. I was there through every second of it. I know there were nights when you genuinely believed you had been abandoned. Nights when heaven felt unbearably silent. Nights when the loneliness became so deep that you wondered whether anyone, even me, truly saw the battle happening inside your soul. But my child, I saw everything. I saw the trembling hands. I saw the panic hidden behind forced smiles. I saw the way you stared into darkness after everyone else had fallen asleep carrying questions too painful to speak aloud. I saw the nights when distant sirens echoed through wet streets outside your window, while you quietly whispered, God, please help me. And even when you could not feel my presence, I remained beside you. That is the truth I need your spirit to fully understand tonight. Feelings can disappear, peace can feel distant, hope can become weak, but my presence never abandoned your life. Even during your darkest season, especially during your darkest season, my child. There were moments when you came dangerously close to giving up completely. Moments nobody around you fully understood. Moments where emotional exhaustion became so overwhelming that continuing another day felt unbearable. And still something inside you kept breathing, kept hoping, kept surviving. That was not an accident. I carried you through nights you never should have survived alone. I protected your mind during battles that nearly destroyed your peace. I shielded your spirit from darkness you did not even realize surrounded you. There were tears you cried that nobody ever saw, but I saw every single one. There were prayers so broken they barely formed words, but I heard every one of them. There were moments when your heart became so numb you feared you would never feel alive again. But even then, I had not left you. My child, pain distorted your vision for a while. It convinced you silence meant abandonment. It convinced you suffering meant punishment. It convinced you loneliness meant you were forgotten. But tonight, heaven is gently correcting those lies. I was in the room with you during every sleepless night. I was beside you during every silent breakdown. I was near when your chest tightened from fear while thunder rolled outside your window and exhaustion consumed your thoughts. Even during moments when you felt spiritually empty, my love remained wrapped around your life. Because my presence was never dependent on your emotional strength. You thought you needed perfect faith for me to stay close. But I remained beside you even when your prayers became messy. Even when your trust became fragile. Even when anger and grief filled your spirit with confusion. My child, I know you blamed yourself many times. You wondered whether your weakness pushed me away. You wondered whether your struggles disappointed me. You wondered whether your brokenness finally became too much. But hear me clearly tonight. Nothing about your suffering made me stop loving you. Nothing. Not your doubts, not your fear, not your exhaustion, not even the moments when hopelessness almost convinced you life would never improve again. I stayed, and tonight, while the world outside grows quiet and your weary soul listens carefully in the darkness, I need you to stop carrying the burden of believing you survived alone, because you did not. Every time you thought you reached the end of your strength, my hand was still holding what remained of your spirit together. Every time despair whispered, "This is the end," my presence quietly protected the fragile light still alive inside you. Every time your soul became too tired to keep fighting, heaven carried you farther than you realized. My child, there is a reason you are still here tonight after everything you survived. Because your story was never meant to end in darkness. I know the scars remain. Healing does not erase memory completely. There will still be nights when certain emotions revisit your heart unexpectedly. Certain songs may still ache. Certain moments may still remind you of what your spirit endured. But those memories no longer define your identity. Because now you know something deeper than pain. You were loved through all of it, even when you could not feel it, even when fear screamed louder than faith, even when the silence terrified you. I was there. Can you feel the tenderness in my voice tonight? That tenderness has always been present around your life, even during seasons when your grief blinded you to it. My child, I never expected you to survive perfectly. I only asked you to keep breathing one moment at a time. And you did. Somehow, through all the exhaustion, heartbreak, confusion, loneliness, and emotional warfare, you survived. That matters more than you realize. You think heaven only celebrates strength, but heaven also honors endurance. The quiet endurance of wounded souls who continue searching for light while walking through unimaginable darkness. And tonight your endurance is finally giving way to restoration. Not because you earned love through suffering, but because my love never stopped reaching toward you through the suffering itself. My child, you are not the same person who first entered this painful season. The darkness changed you, but so did my presence within it. You are softer now, wiser now, more compassionate now, more spiritually awake now. Your tears taught your soul things comfort alone never could. And even though you would never choose the suffering again, I will still bring healing wisdom and purpose from every broken piece of it. That is what redemption does. It transforms pain without pretending the pain never existed. And tonight, redemption is already unfolding quietly inside your life. Can you sense it? The peace entering your spirit, the fear loosening its grip, the exhaustion slowly giving way to rest, the hopelessness fading little by little beneath the warmth of my presence. That is not imagination. That is healing. Real healing. Sacred healing. And my child, after everything you survived, after every silent night, every hidden tear, every trembling prayer whispered into darkness, a new season is finally beginning for your life. My child, when you wake up after tonight, the world around you may look the same at first. The rain may still fall outside your window. The streets may still glisten beneath distant city lights. The coffee on the kitchen counter may still grow cold while morning slowly enters the silence of your room. And yet, something inside you will no longer be the same. Because tonight was never only about temporary comfort. Tonight was about awakening, healing, restoration. Tonight was about your spirit remembering that darkness was never your final destination. For so long you carried pain like a permanent identity. You woke up expecting heaviness. You prepared your heart for disappointment before each new day even began. Fear became routine. Emotional exhaustion became familiar. Survival became the only thing your spirit knew how to do anymore. But my child, your soul was created for more than surviving endless storms. You were created to live again. And tonight life has quietly begun, returning to places inside you that grief once nearly destroyed. Can you feel it now? Not perfectly, not completely, but gently. Like warmth slowly returning after a freezing night. Like sunlight beginning to rise after hours of darkness. Like breathing deeply for the first time after carrying anxiety in your chest for far too long. That is what is happening within your spirit now. The version of you that entered this night carrying hopelessness is not the same version leaving it. Because now you know the truth. You know I never abandoned you. You know your tears mattered. You know your suffering was seen. You know your healing has already begun. And once a soul truly understands those things, darkness can never fully imprison it the same way again, my child. There will still be moments ahead where healing feels slow. Some mornings may still feel heavy. Some nights may still awaken old emotions unexpectedly. Certain memories may still ache while your spirit continues learning how to trust peace again. That does not mean healing failed. It simply means healing is human. Be gentle with yourself in those moments. Do not punish yourself for still carrying scars. Even healed hearts remember where they once bled. But scars are no longer open wounds, and your spirit is no longer bleeding the way it once was. Tonight changed that, not through dramatic noise. Not through instant perfection, but through quiet restoration, sacred restoration, the kind that begins invisibly before it transforms everything outwardly later. My child, after tonight I need you to stop speaking hopelessness over your future. Stop telling yourself you will always feel this broken. Stop believing peace belongs only to other people. Stop assuming every beautiful moment will end in pain. Those thoughts were shaped by fear, not truth. Your future is not chained permanently to your darkest season. There are still mornings waiting ahead where your chest will not feel heavy with dread the second you open your eyes. There are still moments of laughter waiting that will feel genuine again. There are still quiet nights ahead where your soul will finally rest instead of endlessly fighting itself in the darkness. Those moments are coming closer than you realize. Because your restoration did not begin by accident. Heaven fought for your spirit through every painful season leading to this moment. Even during nights when you believed your prayers disappeared into slumps. I was still carrying your weary soul one breath at a time toward this awakening. And now, your spirit is beginning to understand something powerful. You survived, not perfectly, not without scars, but you survived. That matters deeply. There were nights when despair nearly convinced you to disappear emotionally forever. Nights when loneliness felt endless. Nights when anxiety wrapped itself around your chest so tightly that peace seemed impossible. And yet here you are, still breathing, still listening, still choosing light after everything darkness tried to do to your spirit. My child, that resilience inside you is sacred. And I will continue strengthening it as your healing unfolds. Do not fear the future anymore. You have already survived some of the hardest emotional battles of your life. The storms you walked through did not destroy your spirit completely because my hand remained over your life even during moments when you could not feel it. And if I carried you through all of that, I will also carry you through what comes next. You are not walking into tomorrow alone. Not anymore. Not ever again. Tonight your soul crossed into a new season. A quieter season. A softer season. A season where your spirit no longer lives entirely in survival mode. A season where hope slowly becomes stronger than fear. A season where peace begins settling into places grief once ruled. And my child, peace will feel unfamiliar at first. Do not run from it. Do not sabotage it because chaos once felt more familiar. Allow yourself to rest. Allow yourself to heal slowly. Allow yourself to believe that your story can still become beautiful after so much pain. Because it can. It truly can. One day you will look back at this season differently than you do now. Right now, all you can fully see are the tears, exhaustion, loneliness, and unanswered questions. But eventually you will also recognize the strength that was formed inside your spirit through every dark night you survived. You will see how I protected you, how I guided you, how I never abandoned you even once. And when that understanding fully settles into your soul, gratitude will quietly replace the bitterness that once consumed your heart. My child, before this night ends, I want you to remember one final thing. You are deeply loved, not because you became perfect, not because you never struggled, not because your faith never trembled, but because you are mine. And nothing, not fear, not heartbreak, not anxiety, not regret, not even your darkest season could separate my presence from your life. Tonight was your turning point. Tonight was the beginning of your restoration. And perhaps this message found Khan because heaven knew Khan were finally ready to awaken again.